Think about the last important decision you made. Now tell me, Ed, did you actually think it through? Or did you just find reasons to justify what you'd already decided?
My first instinct was to say, of course I thought it through.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I sit with that question, the less certain I am.
What if the voice in your head that sounds like reason is mostly just your brain protecting the conclusion it already reached?
Welcome to The Life Architect.
Let's get into it.
Welcome to The Debate. Imagine you are driving home on a route you've taken, 100 times.
Right. The classic evening commute.
Exactly. You pull into your driveway, you put the car in park, turn off the engine, and suddenly you realize you have absolutely zero memory of the last 15 minutes of your drive.
Oh, yeah. Highway hypnosis. It's wild when that happens.
It is, because think about it. Who's driving the car? Who stopped at the red lights? Who successfully navigated the merge onto the highway? You didn't consciously do any of it. And today, we are looking at research which suggests that this same invisible autopilot isn't just driving your evening commute, it is driving your career, your relationships, and, well, your entire identity.
That's a pretty massive claim.
It's heavy, yeah, but I argue that the vast majority of what we experience as conscious deliberation is an illusion. We are almost entirely run by automatic, hidden associations, and failing to recognize this is our greatest vulnerability.
And I argue that while our automatic responses are powerful, completely surrendering to the idea that our choices are just arbitrary, uncontrollable impulses, that is a paralyzing oversimplification of human agency.
I get why you say that, but to truly grapple with this, we have to stop treating the mind as some ethereal, purely logical entity, right? We have to look at the brain for what it physically is. It's a biological machine desperate to conserve energy.
Right, because thinking is literally exhausting.
Exactly. The human brain makes up about 2% of our body weight, but it consumes 20% of our calories. Deep, deliberate thinking is biologically expensive. It burns glucose. Because of that, the brain constantly jumps to conclusions based on pattern recognition, emotion, and past associations.
So it's basically cutting corners to save fuel.
That's exactly it. It rations energy by shifting as much of our daily functioning as possible to an effortless, low-energy autopilot. And the terrifying part is not merely that this happens, the terrifying part is that it happens silently.
Meaning we don't feel the switch.
Right. We experience these automatic reflexes as deliberate, reasoned choices. Holding this line is uncomfortable, but we cannot escape into the comforting thought of, well, sometimes we are rational. We have to face the music and accept that we usually have no idea who is actually driving the car.
Okay, I understand the gravity of that biological reality. I really do. But I have to voice what I think is a natural, almost visceral resistance to it.
Sure.
Because acknowledging our susceptibility to rapid pattern recognition is one thing, but the sheer bleakness of your premise is, well, it's something else entirely. If every thought, every judgment is just an automatic reflex firing off in the dark to save a few calories, how can we trust any of our professional or personal decisions?
That's the uncomfortable truth.
But treating the mind as an entirely unreliable narrator makes everyday life feel impossibly arbitrary. If evolution gave us this autopilot, it also gave us a highly developed cortex, right? A manual override. We're not just helpless passengers in our own lives.
I see why you want to hold on to that sense of control. I really do. But let's look at what is actually happening in your head at the most granular level. Most of the things you consider conscious decisions aren't decisions at all.
What do you mean?
Well, just as you automatically hit the brakes on a slippery road or instantly recognize anger on a stranger's face, your brain processes complex, nuanced daily situations without asking your permission. You don't choose to read a billboard on the highway. The words just happen to you.
Right. But reading is a mechanical reflex once you possess the skill. We don't consciously decode the letters. That's a low-stakes automation. I'm talking about meaningful evaluation.
But it goes far beyond decoding letters. Let's map this to a lived experience almost everyone has had, probably just this week.
Okay, lay it on me.
Imagine you receive an ambiguous, slightly curt text message. Let's say it just says, "Fine, go ahead."
Oh man, if there's a period at the end of fine, my my stress instantly spikes.
Exactly. But let's say it comes from someone you generally dislike, or maybe a colleague you're currently frustrated with. Before you have even finished reading the sentence, your brain has already assigned a hostile, sarcastic tone to the words.
Yeah, you hear it in their voice, a very specific, annoying tone.
Right, and you sit there staring at your phone, fully believing that you are carefully reading the message and logically evaluating its content. But you aren't. You are actually just reacting to a preloaded emotional association. Your brain matched the person's name to a feeling of frustration, and that feeling dictated the meaning of the text before your deliberate mind even woke up.
I come at that from a different way, though. If our automatic mind is a product of evolution, it must be highly attuned to keeping us alive and navigating our social hierarchies.
Sure, it's based on historical data.
Right, it's rapid pattern recognition. So are you really saying I can't trust any of my immediate reactions? If I can't trust my instant read of a room or the tone of a colleague's voice, that makes basic social interaction feel entirely arbitrary.
It is arbitrary.
But this is paralyzing. If I have to second guess every single social cue because my autopilot might be hallucinating hostility, how do I actually function in the world?
I am holding the line on this because false comfort doesn't help us here. The problem isn't that you have an autopilot that relies on historical data. The problem is exactly what you just described. You don't know when it's driving.
Because it feels like me.
Yes, you cannot turn it off. It is always running, always feeding you impressions that feel perfectly real. You cannot rely on your subjective feeling of certainty because the autopilot will generate a feeling of extreme confidence even when it is completely misreading the situation.
It doesn't flag it as a guess.
Exactly. It doesn't signal you and say, hey, I'm just guessing here based on yesterday's mood. It presents its guess as an objective fact about reality.
Okay, so if the autopilot is locked on and it manufactures its own feeling of certainty, what is the alternative to paralysis? How do we utilize this conscious override we've evolved?
You have to manage the physical conditions under which the autopilot takes total control. Since we established that deliberate thinking is physically demanding, you have to protect your biological resources.
Like making sure you're actually fueled up?
Precisely. If you want to stop the autopilot from hijacking your life, do not make high-stakes decisions and do not send replies to ambiguous messages when you are tired, hungry, or stressed.
The classic HALT acronym. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
Exactly. When your physical energy drops or your blood glucose is low, cognitive depletion sets in. You completely hand the keys over to the autopilot because your brain absolutely refuses to spend the scarce energy required to question its first impulse. You have to actively delay the response until your conscious mind has the biological fuel to intervene.
Okay, let's follow that logic. Let's assume I do exactly that. I receive the curt text message, I realize it's late in the day, and I'm stressed, so I put my phone away.
Smart move.
Right. I get a good night's sleep. I eat a solid breakfast. I come back to my desk the next morning, fully rested, and I sit down to intentionally, deliberately evaluate that message or perhaps a complex business proposal.
Okay, you're fueled up.
Right. If our autopilot dictates our immediate reactions when we are depleted, what happens when we intentionally try to evaluate a situation objectively with full energy? I refuse to believe that when I am actively trying to think, it is still an illusion.
Well, that brings us to the second, much more unsettling reality of our cognition. Even when you are fully rested and believe you are finding the truth, you are usually just defending your first impression.
Defending it?
Yes, confirmation bias is terribly misunderstood in popular culture. People think it means being gullible or stupid or willfully stubborn. It's none of those things. It is, again, a biological imperative to conserve energy.
So it's still about the calories.
Always about the calories. Once an impression is formed by that automatic pilot in the first few milliseconds, the brain aggressively filters all incoming information to protect that impression. Revising your worldview takes a massive amount of computational effort. So instead of acting like a judge impartially weighing the evidence, your brain acts like a corrupt detective.
A corrupt detective.
Yes. Once the detective decides who committed the crime in the first 5 minutes of the investigation, they stop looking for the truth. They just start planting evidence to ensure a conviction.
Okay, but we change our minds. We aren't just rigid machines endlessly planting evidence. If I sit down and look at new data, I can and do revise my opinion.
We change our minds far, far less often than we think we do. Think of the last time you met a new colleague. Your autopilot unconsciously judged them within the first 5 minutes.
Based on, what, a handshake?
Handshake, posture, voice. You instantly decided if they were competent or annoying. And for the next 3 weeks, every interaction you had with them was just you unconsciously collecting evidence to prove your first 5 minutes were right.
Oh, I can actually see that happening.
Right? If you decided they were brilliant, their quietness in a meeting looks like deep, profound thought. But if you decided they were incompetent, that exact same quietness looks like they are lost and confused. You sit there thinking you are carefully evaluating their character over time. You aren't evaluating anything. You are prosecuting a case you already decided on day one.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that it is universally true. That implies our entire professional and personal lives are just exercises in stubbornness. Surely, when the stakes are incredibly high, like when we are evaluating the success of a major project or deciding the strategic direction of a company or staring at a spreadsheet filled with hard data, we are capable of genuine objective analysis.
You'd hope so.
I mean, when millions of dollars or livelihoods are on the line, the corrupt detective must surely step aside.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because the psychology points to the exact opposite. The higher the stakes, the more desperate the brain is for a coherent, safe story.
It wants to feel safe.
It craves coherence. It wants the world to make sense. In a chaotic business environment, leaders crave the safety of a coherent narrative over the messy, contradictory reality of the data. Let's use a business analogy. When an executive team is evaluating if a massive strategic pivot was a good idea 6 months after the fact, they unconsciously spotlight the metrics that validate their initial gut feeling.
You mean they cherry-pick the data?
But they don't do it maliciously or even consciously. If profits are down, their brain instinctively highlights market share as the true indicator of success.
Oh, I see.
If market share is down, they highlight customer engagement or brand awareness. We don't naturally seek the truth. We seek a story that makes our past decisions look justified.
That is profoundly unsettling. You're saying that even when we are staring at a spreadsheet, purportedly doing hard empirical analysis, our invisible associative machine is shining a spotlight only on the numbers that validate the gut feeling we had a month ago.
Exactly.
We aren't analyzing the data. We are just using the data to decorate our preconceived notions.
Precisely. The brain ignores what is missing. It only looks at what is right in front of it, and it builds the best, most comfortable, most coherent story out of those selectively eliminated pieces.
Okay, but if our natural inclination is to act as a defense attorney for our own first impressions, how do we ever break out of that loop? We can't just throw our hands up and say, well, I'm biased, my brain wants to tie to story, so be it. How do we fire the corrupt detective?
Well, you can't fire the detective, but you can force an unnatural intervention.
Unnatural meaning deliberate?
Yes, physical and deliberate. You cannot rely on your brain to naturally present opposing evidence. Its primary job is to hide the opposing evidence from you so you don't have to expend energy resolving the conflict.
Right, saving calories.
So you have to physically write down the specific evidence against your conclusion. If you want to hire someone, force yourself to write a paragraph on why they will be an absolute disaster.
Wow, just force the brain into the opposite gear.
Force your deliberate mind to do the heavy lifting of building the opposite case. Or, returning to our text message scenario, you play a deliberate mental game. You ask yourself out loud, if this exact same message came from someone I deeply admire, how would I read it?
That completely changes the tone in your head.
It does. You have to force the brain to run an entirely different simulation because it will never ever do it voluntarily.
I actually appreciate that intervention. It reintroduces agency. It acknowledges the immense power of the autopilot, but provides a manual, procedural override. But you know, as we pull this thread, I think we hit the absolute heaviest part of this realization.
It gets heavier.
It does, because it's uncomfortable enough to admit that we blindly misjudge emails or that we assemble a biased case against our colleagues. But what happens when we apply this machinery to ourselves?
Ah, yes. That is the final, most unsettling step of this entire framework. The story you tell about yourself may not be you.
Right. The illusions we've been discussing, the way we construct a tidy, coherent narrative out of random information, the way we cherry-pick data to defend our initial assumptions. That doesn't just apply to how we view CEOs, our politicians, or our peers. It applies to how we view our own identity.
Yes, we all construct a tidy narrative that we are the heroes of our own stories. We tell ourselves that we are smart, careful, fair, and rational. The halo effect and the narrative illusions don't just protect our views of others. Our brain's confirmation machine works the absolute hardest to protect this specific story about ourselves.
It defends the ego.
It works overtime, filtering out our own blind spots, filtering out the massive role of sheer luck in our lives, and erasing our arbitrary mistakes.
It's deeply uncomfortable because I catch myself doing this. Just last week, I was looking back at a major project we pitched. We lost the pitch, and almost instantly, I spent an hour constructing this brilliant narrative about how the client's timeline was unreasonable, the budget was misaligned, and the market conditions were just wrong.
Of course.
I never once stopped to genuinely consider that maybe my presentation was just confusing.
Because doing so would threaten your core narrative. It burns too much energy to rebuild your self-image.
Exactly. And the reverse is true as well. If it was a success, say we landed a huge client or solved a massive problem, I would have told an incredibly tidy story about my hard work, my brilliant strategic choices, and my perseverance. I would never see the randomness. I would just see myself as the rational protagonist navigating an irrational world.
That's a profound point, though I would frame it slightly differently. We don't just see ourselves as the rational protagonist. We see ourselves as the inevitable protagonist.
Inevitable?
Yeah, we look at our past and think everything that happened was bound to happen exactly the way it did because of who we inherently are. We smooth over all the near misses, the lucky breaks, and the foolish risks that just happen to pay off. We edit our own history to make our current identity feel inevitable, but it's an illusion curated by a biological machine trying to maintain your psychological equilibrium.
I have to pause here because, if I truly accept this, the implications are staggering. If the very mechanisms that misjudge a text message are the exact same mechanisms constructing my self-worth, then the person I believe I am might just be a comfortable story I tell myself.
That's the mirror.
Questioning my own fundamental fairness or my own rationality feels incredibly vulnerable. It feels like a massive weakness to admit I don't truly know my own mind. If I can't even trust the narrative of my own life, what is left to trust? It strips away the very foundation of how we navigate the world.
I hear the weight of that. It is an existential weight. But I want to reframe what you just said about weakness. Questioning the narrative is not a weakness. Blindly trusting the tidy story, assuming you are the one human being immune to biology, is the true weakness.
So the discomfort is the point.
Embracing this discomfort, the realization that your identity is heavily edited by a brain trying to make you feel good, is the only actual path to clarity.
It's kind of like looking into a mirror your whole life that only reflects what you want to see. A mirror with a built-in filter that smooths out all your irrationalities. And suddenly, this research hands you a different mirror with a much higher resolution, and you see all the flaws, all the randomness, all the times you were just running on autopilot and calling it genius.
Exactly. And the goal is not to stare in that high-resolution mirror and hate what you see. The goal is to stop being fooled by the blurry one. If you understand how fiercely your brain protects your self-image, you can start catching it in the act.
So, what's the intervention here?
The concrete intervention to take, especially before finalizing any high-stakes choice that impacts your life, your career, or your identity, is to literally ask yourself out loud, am I actually thinking about this, or am I just justifying what my autopilot already decided to do?
Am I thinking, or am I just justifying? That is a heavy, heavy question to carry around in your daily life.
It is.
As we synthesize all of this, I have to admit the mirror-like quality of this entire intellectual exchange. It is deeply unsettling to realize we aren't fully in control of our choices. The idea that an invisible autopilot is running the show, planting evidence like a corrupt detective, protecting our egos, and filtering reality to save biological energy, it is a bitter pill.
It is, but a necessary one.
Right. And while I still firmly believe we have the capacity for reason, that our cortex gives us a manual override if we choose to use it, I accept that questioning our internal narratives about our colleagues, our choices, and ourselves is an absolutely necessary discomfort.
And that discomfort is the entire point of exploring this framework. These insights into human cognition are not meant to destroy our self-trust, but to refine it. The goal is brutal honesty. We have to be honest about when we are actually engaging in the hard, physically exhausting work of deliberate thinking versus when we are effortlessly feeling an emotional reflex and merely calling it thinking.
It completely shifts the baseline of what it means to be a rational adult. It demands a level of intellectual humility that is exhausting, but undeniably necessary. After looking through this material and confronting just how powerfully our biology shapes our reality, I'm not going to think less of myself, but I'm going to think differently
differently about my thinking.